Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Conscious Grief series. I am delighted to be with Paul Denniston today. Paul is the founder of Grief Yoga, and he is the author of Healing Through Yoga, which is being released this month. So I am very honored to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and it's just exciting to meet you well, as much as in person can be right now. And I have been following your work. I have signed up for your training and then I had to cancel. Um, so my intention is to train with you in 2022 because I think what you have created is so powerful. I've watched a lot of your videos and seen what you offer, and I'm intrigued, Paul. How did you come up with grief yoga? What was your inspiration?
When I first started to go to yoga classes, it was to just help with my anxiety. I was looking for an exercise practice to help bring me more peace. And in doing so, what it opened the door for me to do was to be with uncomfortable emotions, which I tended to want to run away from, especially, a young man growing up in Texas, these challenging emotions, whether it be sadness or anger, for me, got suppressed. And so what I was drawn to within the yoga at the beginning when I was originally going was because I kind of wanted a physical workout and exercise to help with to bring more peace. But then I learned how to compassionately be with these challenging emotions. And I started to get curious about where am I holding on to these emotions within my body. And so as a teacher, as a student for many years, I loved the practice so much, and so I became a teacher, and I became really fascinated with, as a teacher, the specific thing about intentions. Like, what's your intention for being in class? And as I really reflected on my intention as a teacher, I really was drawn to, what if I created an entire practice with how to move with these challenging emotions, whether they be grief or anger or regret. There was a part of me that wanted to, instead of, I spent so many years trying to run away from them, that I thought, what if we either could be with it, or to move with it, or even to channel these challenging emotions as fuel, with the intention to have us connect in a deeper way to more love, more grace, more gratitude. And so that was a little bit of kind of my journey within this process.
And how did you land on grief specifically? I asked that because when I've done certain label things with the word grief, some people are like, oh, don't use that word, it's so heavy. You could have called it love yoga, for example, but
Sure.
you chose grief.
I know, it is interesting, right? And I have so many people who are just like, ooh, that sounds, well, first off, grief is so intimidating, and then yoga can be so intimidating for people too. And here's the thing, I believe grief is love. And a lot of the time, what happens is, okay, why did I decide to call it grief yoga? I think that for me, it was, let's teach what I need to learn and grow more with. And I thought, as a man, dealing with sadness and grief was something that I felt but didn't know how to be with or to express. And so I was learning from many different trauma experts, grief experts, about where we can hold that struggle and that grief and that pain in the body, whether it be anger, whether it. I just started to become fascinated by it. And my background is also a movement teacher and choreographer. And so I was kind of also blending a space of yoga and dance to address this. And so I think that the question is that why did I choose to focus on grief? I think because it's a reflection of love, and I felt like it was something that needed to be addressed about how we hold it in our body, and I recognize that some people can be afraid of it or to judge grief, but when we learn that it's just a space of love, then maybe it's a way for us to be able to be with it, to sit with it, to move with it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it says what it is. And it's always interesting to me, the people that are sort of avoidant of that word, and perhaps in people that haven't really experienced it themselves.
And here's the thing, I because grief can be such an exhausting emotion, there is ways that I approach this that is a little different. I mean, there are techniques and exercises to empower the person, especially if we're working with people dealing with trauma. The intention with this work is to empower the person so they can hold that space of vulnerability. They can even use techniques of laughter to help the free flow of emotions through. I think that these emotions are all colors of who we are. And so it's interesting how when I started this, it was about grief yoga, but then it just goes way beyond that. This is a practice that's not about physical flexibility, but emotional liberation and allowing all of these emotions to move through because our body holds on to it. And so it's really about showing how this healing needs motion. And the work that I do takes people on a cycle of compassionate transformation where they don't get stuck in the pain, they don't suppress it, but it's a compassionate way of moving through it that can be empowering and liberating.
Mm-hmm. And I always really encourage people to do some body work or do some movement as well as just talking, because we can be very in our heads all of the time. And I suppose the other reason why I feel so um, passionate about what you're offering and talking about how grief and pain gets held in the body was watching what happened to my mother, because our father died and then she had a series of lots of losses, and this is now in the 90s, and we didn't have any idea about like body mind soul connection, and she then got breast cancer. And I often back and think, oh gosh, if we knew what we knew now, all of that, as you call it, the issues in our tissues, we would have had some awareness about moving through that, which is why I think what you're offering is just so powerful for people.
I My sister had cancer also, and um, it started off as breast cancer for her too, and I recognized for her, she had a lot of suppressed anger, and she felt like, good girls aren't supposed to be angry. And so I think that anger is a reflection of grief. I think that anger is grief's bodyguard. Sometimes by releasing the anger, it can allow us to tap into the sadness. But again, a lot of the times what happens is that we suppress it, creating sometimes a sense of dis-ease within our body. And so it's just a recognition about how important it is that movement can help facilitate and release some of that pain so we don't hold on to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And
it's interesting. Sometimes people are like, they don't want to let go of pain because they feel like that's their connection with their loved one too. But I recognize that a lot of this work is designed to release the pain so we can remember with more love, so we can hold on to love. And I believe that uh, So yeah, I sometimes people are afraid to go into the struggle and the pain, but there's that whole philosophy of buffaloes, that when they see a storm is coming, they don't run from it. They actually, to minimize their pain, they run through the storm. So that's a little bit about what this work is about. So we don't have to hold on to it.
Mm-hmm. And tell people like how this yoga is not about sort of headstands and holding difficult
Yeah.
positions. It's a more accessible type of yoga.
Well, one of the things that for me, when I started to do this and put this work together, I was dealing with a lot of injuries within my own body. My arm was broken. I had a difficulty walking at times. I had a lot of injuries that I was dealing with. And so as I started to develop and create this practice, in some ways, those injuries within myself tapped me into a more compassionate space to learn how to adapt a practice that was for everybody. And so as I was developing this, I really wanted to focus more on emotional liberation. And so it's really blending movement, breath, and sound, sound being the vibration of our voice, because sometimes we can get suppressed within our throat, taking that and finding ways that each person can do it in their own way. Sometimes someone can do it with a lot of power, and sometimes it can be something that is more subtle. But it was my intention about it's because I believe that these emotions are meant to flow through, especially in a sense of grief. And so what this work is it's more of a flowing meditation, not necessarily holding postures and breathing, but kind of moving and flowing with them. So, because that's what I believe that grief and loss can be. It's a way of how because a lot of the times it's so normal for us to get stuck in it, and
Mhm.
so there's a possibility of moving with it, even if it's a slow, gentle movement, and that was kind of my intention.
Yeah, and I think you said something around how grief brings us into a state of disconnection, and yoga is all about connection.
Yeah, I mean, when we're experiencing loss, we're literally disconnected from someone or something that we loved. And the meaning of what yoga is union, connection, harmony within the mind and the body to help lift the spirit. And so, and I think also one of the gifts that yoga can provide is being present, because it's such a focus on breath. And I think when we are experiencing grief and loss, it's so normal for us to be stuck in the past or to have fear and anxiety of the future. And so it's a compassionate practice on being present and learning how to move and adapt in somewhat of an unwanted new normal when we've gone through that loss.
And you talked about the breath just then, and how when we're in grief, that really affects our lungs.
Yeah, I mean, when I work with students, sometimes I'll hear them, I can't breathe. It's hard to breathe. And I think that we restrict our breath because when we breathe deeply, we are able to feel deeply. And so, but sometimes when loss happens and we're grasping to take control or because a lot of the times when loss happens we feel like we've lost control, and so there's a grasping and a holding on to things, and sometimes what can happen within that is we restrict our breath. So we definitely do a lot of deep breathing within this practice, and we'll do different ways to breathe, because think about that, breath is life force energy. And so there's a way to use that breath to help to um, unlock what is suppressed.
Mm. So tell us about your book, Paul, because I'm excited to hear about that and to receive it myself, Healing Through Yoga.
And the subtitle is Transform Loss into Empowerment. And I've been working on this book for like 6 years, and I kept trying to figure out um, how do you take something that's experiential
Mm.
and create it that's in a book. And as I kept working with this and seeing how I was teaching and offering the classes, I started to become aware that, oh, I'm going through a specific pathway here. And so I wanted to embody that within the book. And so what was developed within this whole process is that the book explains the cycle of compassionate transformation. And within it, the first step is about awareness, becoming present with the breath, learning how to safely move the body, and starting to become curious about where am I holding the struggle and the pain within the body. And then the second step is about expression. And expression is using movement, breath, and sound to take the struggle and the pain and learning to channel it, to learn it, to move it through. The third step, covered within the book in this practice, then, is about connection. And connection happens through self, connection can happen with others, connection can happen through spirit, but there are moving meditations that move us towards more love, more grace, more gratitude. Just like expression would be about releasing the struggle and the pain, connection is really about how to fill ourselves back up again. Surrender, the next step, is really about how to learn how to soften, how to gently begin to restore the body, how to move into a place of trust. They are practices that really are meant to quiet the mind, soften the body, and find restoration. And then the next step is called evolution. And evolution is based on who am I now after this loss. And it gives techniques using movement. Movement, breath, and sound is based on all of these techniques, but the specific ones within evolution is how to tap in towards more perseverance, balance, purpose, and play. And that is, after this loss, how do we move forward? Who am I now? Perhaps how am I different after this loss, after loving them? And ways to move forward in life.
I love that. And it's making me think about how if we're not intentional around our healing and our grief, then the tendency is to go into sort of a state of fear and protection, to think I don't ever want to feel this pain again. And then we're really cutting ourselves off from a lot of life. And I love what the journey that it takes you on to play, for example,
Right.
that you're talking about, because yeah, grief can make us super serious, and I think, like I was saying, you call grief yoga, and people think, oh my God, that's when I say to people I'm doing work in grief, I think they can be like, oh my gosh, how miserable, why would you want to do that? You have this baddest job, and it's actually like, well, if we're being really intentional with our grief, we can laugh, we can feel.
I have laughter techniques and exercises in it because here's the thing, it's a fine line between laughter and grief. And even though there are times where, grief can be exhausting, and why I tap people into their power and their courage, it's also recognizing the importance about, to take a break from the pain, and that laughter exercises can allow the free flow of emotions to move through. Laughter helps us with our breathing. And so laughter is a very key component within this. And so laughter, dance, these are important things that can help us. So we need to make sure we take time for those types of things too.
Yeah, and I know that you've trained in many modalities, And you were saying, was there one that was laughter or a dance?
Laughter yoga is
Yeah.
using laughter techniques that are, it's not about humor, but it's using laughter techniques to shift things. So it's like, what you might find humorous is different than what I might find humorous, but these are techniques that are used to incorporate laughter and to allow us to feel whatever we're feeling right now, but using these techniques to move them through and using laughter. Because a part of this work, again, is using movement, breath, and sound. And with laughter, the breath is powerful within laughter, and sound, can be also, ha ha ha, could be powerful too. And, it's interesting when I'm incorporating this, sometimes people are very uncomfortable about it. And so I'll be like, okay, we'll do a little uncomfortable laugh, like, ha, 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 ha. you know. But what can happen is that it can start to move things through, and the laughter actually facilitates the love, unresolved grief, a powerful way of moving through. Again, it's that fine line between laughter and tears. And, my sister who passed away from cancer, she, this is a picture of her right here. I'll tell you, I loved her laugh. She loved my laugh. She would want me to continue to laugh. And I can still miss her, and I can still recognize, and I'm alive, and I'm gonna still find moments where laughter can help be a healing force.
I'm so glad that you shared that photo of her. It's Ella, is it your sister?
Yeah, Ella.
Yeah.
She was my younger sister. She was my baby. She was my best friend growing up, and so I really devote this work to her.
Yeah, and it's curious in a way that you started this journey with grief yoga pre her, Ella passing. Is that right?
When she this work started when she told me that she had cancer. She had advanced stage 4 cancer, and I was dealing with a lot of like uncertainty about things, and I was going to yoga, and I was dealing with a lot of uncertainty with my own physical body. I was dealing with struggles and challenges that my dog was slowly deteriorating. I was dealing with a lot of addiction to try to numb the pain.
Mm.
And a lot of this work is designed for as I have become sober and learned how to move with these challenging emotions, and to learn how to like I don't know, to move with to release some of the fear, the the resentment and the hurt, to move it through so I can connect with her with more love. I can connect to others in a deeper, more meaningful way. And so yeah, it's really been kind of like a journey to open the heart.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting how yoga becomes that place, doesn't for so many of us when we're
The heart of yoga is compassion.
mm,
And so I think that yeah, I think that for those who might start to go to yoga for specific reasons, a workout or whatever it is, they'll start to resonate. Oh, there's something much deeper beneath the surface that's coming up for me here.
yeah, it's so true. I was even saying last night in a group that things are changing so rapidly now in terms of people being more open and how we used to be obsessed with like looking good, for example, and being thin and going to the gym. And now I feel like we're really in this place of exercising our hearts and our
Mm,
minds.
it's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, and it
And to recognize we're all going through loss, especially in this pandemic. I mean, and our loss can look different, and whether we call it grief or not, I mean, identifying, the loss of uncertainty of what's to come, the loss of what we thought our life was supposed to be, the loss of my body's not working the way it used to, the loss of loved ones, the loss of relationships. Um, we all we all grieve in our own unique way, and it's a perfect way of doing it. But to just recognize how much we all experience loss and we're all struggling in our own way, and the healing power of movement and yoga to help us to move through it.
Mm. Yeah. And that it's not all an intellectual thing, that we can't just think our way out of it.
And how, when we're struggling, how cruel we can be to ourselves. I'm harder on myself than anybody else is when going through struggle, and so yeah, we can be really hard on ourselves. So just recognizing how important it is to just be gentle with ourselves when we're in pain. I remember, like, I was talking to this friend, and I was just going on about, like, how much I was a failure, or how, cruel I was being to myself. And I remember her saying, she's like, it's hard for me to allow. She goes, don't talk to my friend that way, like, of how I was talking to myself. And she goes, she goes, it hurts for me to hear you say that. And she goes, please treat my friend a little nicer. And I was like, oh wow, it just made me aware of, like, how cruel I was being to myself, and how important it was to recognize that. And how can we be a little kinder to ourselves? And part of the work then too within this work is that it's about not bypassing the pain, but I recognize it's in my mind. The mind and body are connected, so there's also a need to move it through the body too, so it can help lift the spirit.
Mm. Absolutely. And I think it's what you're saying is such a reminder for people who are in grief, who have this sort of expectation that they should be further along than they are. If they're still feeling a lot of pain and a lot of sadness, and they can be beating themselves up and like, it's been this long, it's been 1 year, I should be in a different place. And it's like, no, just keep coming back, like you were saying, to being compassionate to yourself.
Hard work, not easy work. And so it also comes back to, you know, how can I find connection too? As much as and as important it is to release the struggle, sometimes we need to find connection within ourselves. How can I be a little bit more kinder to myself? Maybe it's about finding connection to another. Who can I reach out to for support? Perhaps the connection can even be a prayer of just help me, I need help here. So when feeling disconnected like that, where can we find connection?
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And where can we find you? What are you going to be offering that we can?
Where can you find me? Um, I'm in LA. No, yeah. So my book, Healing Through Yoga: Transform Loss into Empowerment, is coming out through Chronicle Books on January 18th. And if you're interested, you can go to healingthroughyoga.com. And part of my intention with how can you create something experiential like a book to something that can really help the student and the reader is that I've offered a free companion course for anybody who pre-orders the book. So if you purchase it, go to healingthroughyoga.com, just sign up to where you purchased the book, or you can find ways to purchase the book there. And the companion course is a 3-week guide that kind of takes the themes and explains them and gives you a class experience so you can kind of embody the work too.
Amazing. So is that something we get when we get the book? alongside the book?
Yeah. Well, didn't you pre-order the
I
book?
pre-ordered it, so I'm thinking I need to
All right, then.
email.
Hello. Go to
Yeah.
healingthroughyoga.com and
Okay.
then just say where you purchased the book,
Ah, I see.
and
Thank
it'll, it'll send you a little, on January 18th, it'll tell you, it'll send you the information. Or if you order it after January 18th, that's fine. It'll just sign up for it, and it'll give you that experience. It'll give you a free course.
Amazing. Amazing. And you're giving everybody who's watching the Conscious Grief series a free chair yoga session.
Yeah, which is a 20-minute experience. Yes, using movement, breath, and sound.
Yeah, that's wonderful because not everybody wants to sit on the floor and can do it at your desk right now if that's
Totally.
yeah. And is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap up, Paul?
Just what a lovely host you are.
Oh,
And I've had a very nice time talking with you.
oh,
And, I'll just say this again. Grief is just love.
right.
Grief is love. And sometimes when we're experiencing grief, it can be a little bit of feeling like it's love with nowhere to go. And so this work just allows a space of that even when I'm stuck in fear or uncertain, I can be strong, I can be powerful, and I can feel the loss, and I can also still move with love.
Yeah, that's a wonderful reminder. Thank you very, very much, Paul.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. And thank you to everybody who's been watching.